After these girls were murdered, it is the DNA evidence that was collected at the scene on day one that was a deciding factor in the guilt of this defendant. One thing that I know, and one thing that everybody that stands behind me knows, is that we've known who the killer was of these girls for a long time. We just simply didn't know his name. This jury found his name and found him guilty based upon the evidence that was presented. I want to thank very specifically the 12 members of this community who served on this jury. This was a long 2 weeks with a great deal of testimony and, frankly, a very emotional courtroom. And we are grateful for their thoughtful consideration of the evidence in this case in finding justice for two families that have waited for 24 years to be able to get this verdict. I'm also remarkably thankful for skilled law enforcement that were involved in this case, specifically the Ozark Police Department, the SBI, the Dale County Sheriff's Office, the FBI, and Dothan Police Department, all who were intricately involved in making sure that we had the opportunity to try and convict Coley McCraney for these murders. I was blessed to be able to work with a remarkable team, and I want to acknowledge them here today. Jimmy Thomas, who is with our office, Emmett Massey with the Dale County DA's office, Jennifer Means-Marsh, who is with the AG's office, and Ashley Helms, who did a remarkable job as a victim service officer supporting the people that were most impacted by the allegations that you've heard here today. You know, sometimes people ask me, what does an attorney general do? And I tell them I'm the voice for victims and the voice for law enforcement. For 30 years, I practiced law. For 20 plus of those, I've been in courtrooms representing victims and law enforcement. And I can tell you that no case in my career have the dual roles that I've described for you as Attorney General been more important. Partly, I want to thank both Tracy's family and JB's family for letting us be their voice. We had the opportunity now, 24 years later, to get what you've asked from the very beginning, to identify those that killed your children and to be able to get justice for them. Thank you for giving us that privilege. But I also want to make it abundantly clear that this case has been surrounded by rumors, by innuendo, and allegations that are absolutely false. Now, Mr. Thomas and I have not been involved with this case for 24 years, but David Emery has. The AG's office hasn't been connected for that period of time, but the DA's office here has. And Ozark PD has worked diligently from the very beginning to find out who committed this offense. And to the extent that there are allegations and rumors that many still want to propound on social media, number one, they didn't sit in this courtroom and listen to the evidence. Because if they had, they would understand exactly why this jury convicted this defendant. Beyond that, Mr. McCraney's team had the opportunity to present whatever evidence they wanted. In a hearing in August, a judge considered fabricated evidence that he said was not valid and not truthful and didn't allow it in this courtroom. And to the extent that anybody wants to continue to make an allegation against this department, they're not doing so with facts and they're not doing so with evidence. This case has shown conclusively who committed this offense, who should be held accountable, and the jury got it right. And I can absolutely tell you that I will defend this department to no end against those who would somehow or another have attempted to say otherwise. Because uniquely, Mr. McCraney had an opportunity to prove that, and it was never presented, nor was it ever something for this jury to be able to consider. We are remarkably grateful for what took place today. It doesn't change the result of what happened on July 31st or August 1st of 1999. We lost two precious girls who, unlike Mr. McCraney, who has been free now for 20 plus years, didn't have the opportunity to do the very things that we heard today in mitigation. Didn't have the opportunity to become that wife and that mother. Didn't have the opportunity to be able to grow up and experience life in a remarkable way. That's what this case is about. And the opportunity for this jury to find Mr. McCraney guilty doesn't bring closure, but it at least shows who did it, how they did it, and ultimately he's going to be able to spend the rest of his life in prison thinking about what he's done. I want to be able to give a couple people an opportunity to be able to speak here today. Emmett Massey with the DA's office here in Denver.
Good afternoon. First, I just want to commend our law enforcement officers. You know, despite all the speculation and rumors and conspiracy theories, they continue to strive and work harder and harder and harder each day to try to bring justice to these families. I want to thank personally from myself as well as our District Attorney Kirk Adams, just allowing us, like Steve said, to be your voice. I mean, just getting to know you and getting to know your girls through you. It was just an unfortunate experience, but a beautiful experience all the same. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart that we got that opportunity to be your voice. I also cannot say enough about this man right here and his team. The fact that they trusted me to be a part of this trial team, to sit with them every step of the way, just a team that like I've never been a part of. And this man, let me just say something maybe a little off script. In a world full of politicians that spend a lot of time talking about stuff they don't actually believe in, and a lot of time, really spend a lot of time being camera ready and not doing a lot of substance, this man is every bit of what he pretends to be. I mean, he is a great Christian man, a leader, and his team, Mr. Jimmy Thomas, Miss Jennifer, everybody involved in this case have hearts for victims. They have hearts to seek and go after justice. I want to thank everybody from my team as well. Miss Ashley, she is absolutely the glue that holds our office together, and the gift that God's given her to work with victims is something that I admire wholeheartedly. But again, I want to echo what Steve said. Despite all the conspiracy theorists and people who like to talk without having any kind of facts, I just want to say this department and all these law enforcement officers never gave up and continue to work. And it's just truly a gift from God that after over 20 years that we're hoping that we can bring some closure and some justice to these families. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome Chief Charles Ward, Ozark Police Department.
Thank you. I'd just like to echo what's already been said. First of all, I'd like to thank General Steve Marshall them for coming in and assisting with this case, and it's been going on a while. Thank you for your whole team for what they've done. I also like to thank all our federal, state, and county and local partners who also assisted. I'd like to speak on behalf of my team, Deputy Chief Michael Bryan, him and all his staff for the work that they've done to bring closure to this case. To the Hollick and Beasley family, I also echo my heart's with you. I'm thankful that y'all finally getting some closure here on this, and we would forever keep y'all in our minds. Okay. Also to the jury, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I just like to personally thank them for what they have done. I know it's a tough gig, and I don't care which way they win. It's going to be people in this community think they should have went another way. What I'm saying is we need to accept their decisions that they made as we move forward with this and as we continue to grow and heal from this in this community. Thank you.
If you were in the courtroom, you saw that I questioned the defendant about coincidences, about where he claimed he last saw him, where his house was located. We had a very fortunate coincidence that allowed us to solve this case. I want to commend Chief Walker, who's in the role that Chief Ward is in now, who had the vision to be able to seek out genealogy DNA. You didn't get a chance to hear much about it in the trial of this case, but it gave us that first lead, which caused him to call Coley McCraney into his office to get his DNA. And frankly, the only reason why that call was made is that Chief Walker and Coley McCraney went to school together. They knew each other, and obviously we were able to get the match that became so critically important for us moving forward. Again, remain very humbled by what the jury has done, very grateful for what they have answered with regard to the call of their duty, and for their seeing clearly what we've known for a long time, and that is that Coley McCraney committed this offense. So happy to be able to answer any questions. I will say on behalf of the family, they don't wish to take questions at this time, but I greatly appreciate, again, their respect for us and what we tried to do and for our ability to get this conviction. So.
Well, you were very confident in your case. You never know what a jury is going to do. So when you heard those words yesterday, guilty, 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 What did that mean to you, and especially as you say you're a voice for the victim's family?
It was a validation for everybody involved. I mean, I think there were tears for all of us that were involved in this case, because ultimately, again, this case is 20 plus years old, and we were able to use the tools that law enforcement gave us, the talents of DFS, to be able to get this conviction. And so, to some extent, it was relief because we were able to accomplish what this family wanted, but also it was a vindication of what we've known for a long time, the truth. And the jury saw through what the defendant said. Many of you heard that testimony, which was absolutely unbelievable. They saw through it, and they saw the true facts. Ken?
Yes, sir. Your office will handle the appeal, is that correct?
As we will in any case, yes.
That's what I thought. Then my question, you mentioned Mr. Emery. Mr. Emery, you spent a few months on this case. Mr. Emery spent a few years.
He spent 24 years.
Well,
Yeah.
absolutely, he did. So just a little bit for you to talk a little bit what you touched about earlier, what he meant, and for lack of a better term, maybe dedicating the outcome, given what happened.
Yeah, you know, the reality is I wouldn't be trying this case had David Emery not been in a bicycle wreck for which he suffered significant physical injury. And so David not only was very much helpful for particularly Jimmy and I with what took place in this case, but also he had a vision for what needed to accomplish. David's had a remarkable career, outstanding supernumerary DA that still continues to work. And again, his dedication and work with law enforcement is what allowed us to ultimately be successful here. Yeah, and let me also just acknowledge this. This is National Crime Victims Week, and I'm not losing sight of the fact that we're getting this conviction during this time. And one thing I also want to be able to highlight is the role that our victims advocates had, particularly, you know, with y'all being here. Very grateful, Ms. Doris, for that. Assisting these families with what they were encountering.
Yeah, I was going to mention, when you came in, you know, you're wondering where you're going to be at the forefront of this case. In reality, Mr. Massey did opening arguments, Mr. Thomas did closing arguments, did the rebuttal. Just your thoughts on sharing the responsibility and what each one of their roles were in this case.
Oh, I think they were absolutely instrumental. I mean, don't think for a second that Jimmy Thomas wasn't the sort of the glue that held us ultimately together. You saw he took every technical witness, every person from the Department of Forensic Science. That was his responsibility. That's not an easy lift for any prosecutor. Emmett Massey had responsibility for vast parts of this case. In fact, was going to try it with David Emery before. You know, frankly, my job was to stay out of the way and to make sure I allowed skilled people to be able to do their work and to be able to get the result that we got here today. Let me go right here.
And then with this being like the second, like with, I guess, the DNA kind of evidence kind of being, what does it mean for like maybe the state of Alabama, like going forward using this kind of evidence and using this kind of, you know, you guys' kind of attack of it?
Yeah, remember the way that genealogy DNA was used is it was simply an investigative tool. It gave us an opportunity to be able to find out individuals that we didn't know before. So it was not directly introduced, but yet it gave us the opportunity to find who that offender was. I mean, before that took place, we obviously knew that Coley McCraney lived somewhere close by, but he was not on our radar screen to be able to investigate it. We had no idea that he was at the Big Little store on the same night the girls were there. We had no reason to be able to connect him to this crime. And as a result of the fine work that was done by the private lab, that was done at the request of our police department, we got that break that we needed. I can guarantee you that Barry Tucker would have loved to have known years ago of the existence of Coley McCraney, to be able to look for a gun, to be able to have a greater sense of where that scene was. That genealogy DNA gave us the opportunity to do it. Frankly, it's the first time that I'm aware in the state of Alabama that we've been able to use genealogy DNA to get a conviction ultimately by finding the offender. But it's a remarkable tool that I think will continue to be evolving. And I want to commend again our fine scientists at the Department of Forensic Science who absolutely did the threshold work at the beginning, whether it be the collection of evidence, the testing and finding of semen, the ultimate identification of DNA. And y'all, one of the most compelling parts of this case was finding the soil stains inside the jeans. Had we not had trained forensic scientists attempting to look for that, That's not compelling evidence that the jury was able to hear.
I know the families don't want to speak, but you said you got to know
Yeah.
their daughters through them. For the last 24 years, we've known JB and Tracy as the victims of this crime, but to their families and their loved ones, they were so much more. Who were these girls?
I mean, they were Alabama, right? They were on the precipice of being able to begin their lives. They were daughters. They were best friends. They were pillars of their own clique and group of people. They were siblings of brothers and sisters. They were who we are as a community. And yes, I appreciate words from the defense saying they're sorry about the loss of their life. But let's don't forget who committed this crime and took those girls away from it. They'd be 41 years old now. Can you imagine what they would have been able to do with their lives over the last 24 years and what we have lost because they didn't have that opportunity?
When did Steve Marshall say this is going to be guilty? At what point in the trial did you know? Because you've been a prosecutor a long time. You know.
Yeah, you're saying I'm old, Ken, is what you're saying. What you're saying. I mean, I never assume, that's a David Harrison term, I guess, just earlier, but I don't assume what a jury's going to do. What I did know is that we had presented the best case that we could possibly present, that we had done it through talented and skilled prosecutors, and that we gave them the evidence they needed.
Let me re-ask the question.
Okay.
Since you answered it that way. Was Coley, in your mind, Coley McCraney's testimony, did that turn out to be better for you than it was for him?
I'll let the jury tell you that. I will say this, I enjoyed that cross-examination. Sometimes the truth's able to come out under hard questions. All right. Thank everybody for your time. Again, thank you to the family.
Thank you, General.
Okay.
You just heard Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall with the family.